merchant gets his head severed by the demonic cult, swallows a mysterious pill that sends him screaming back to his teenage and wakes up as a nobody disciple with a floating shopping menu only he can see. But instead of grinding martial arts like every other protagonist, he immediately starts hustling grass flutes and making business connections, because in his book, money talks louder than sword. The story begins at the largest merchant guild in the Central Plains, the Wang Trading Company, and that night the place was completely reduced to ashes, with rebel bodies and riches scattered across the floor amidst the flames, because of course the demonic cult decided to throw a housewarming party with extra arson. A group of masked men surrounded the old guild master, and the leader provoked him, saying that in the end he's just a merchant and not a martial artist, demanding he hand over the key to make things easier. But the old merchant wasn't intimidated and asked if he looked like an idiot who would fall for that line, dropping the classic. The real idiots were the members of the demonic cult for not realizing they couldn't kill me without the key, challenging them to open the chest with their martial arts, but warning he wouldn't be responsible for what was inside, which is basically the Muram version of, "Are you sure you want to open that?" The cultist then used a mind control technique and asked aggressively where the key was, and the guild leader got caught by the technique, his mind getting invaded as he realized his own mouth was moving against his will, revealing the key was hidden under his chair like some kind of fantasy hide-and-seek champion. One of the masked men found it. The cult leader grabbed the chest and key, but the merchant wasn't done yet, provoking him by asking why he didn't open it now. And the cultist realized the key required a special method, so the merchant kept mocking him until the annoyed cultist used his technique again and ordered the guild master himself to open the box, forcing the old man to curse the leader of the martial alliance who gave him that task while placing the key in the lock and wondering what kind of trouble had been thrown into his hands, because a glowing chest is never a good sign in these stories. A strong light shone from within, and he couldn't believe they burned down his entire company for a single pill. But then a blade pressed against his neck, and the cult leader offered to hear his last words, so the merchant desperately asked how much it would cost for them to let him live. But the cultist shut that down quick, asking if he was done talking, and the guild leader thanked him for helping him decide, saying he couldn't be the only one to suffer and die there as he swallowed the pill, and shouted that his way of business was to repay all favors and grudges, blue energy exploding from him like he just activated a self-destruct sequence. The cultist was startled, but in an instant the merchant's head was severed and flew through the air, his consciousness fading as his body fell into an abyss of light, and suddenly he woke up screaming in a totally different place, panicking and grabbing his neck, wondering if his head was still attached, sitting on the bed confused because he was sure his neck had been cut. And that's when you know Truck Kun's cousin the demon pill just pulled a classic regression move on. Someone called him and he turned around frightened, and an older man scolded him for being lazy as a Taoist gate disciple. But the man was shocked when he saw that face, recognizing Elder Chiang Ian of the Wang sect, who confirmed it was him and hit him with a staff, calling him a brat, and Hu Yang was completely lost, remembering that more than 30 years had passed since he was a disciple of Wang, and even though he was expelled, he still remembered Chiang Ian as his master, and didn't understand why he looked exactly the same, which is the moment you realize this isn't just regression, but full-on time travel shenanigans. And as if that wasn't weird enough, a pile of bamboo strips floated in front of him showing a list of talents and prices, and although it looked like an ordinary bamboo strip, it was simply floating in the air, basically a system window with extra steps, and Hu Yang realized this mysterious list was visible only to him, concluding that this bamboo strip must be the only clue to understanding what was happening, analyzing the list and seeing he could buy talents with notes and prices, wondering if money really worked because the items and prices were absurd, with things like the legendary celestial eye or a martial bone for 300 taels. But he found a fast movement ability costing only 3 copper coins with a beginner's discount, so he called his master and asked with an innocent look to lend him just 3 copper coins, which left the elder visibly annoyed, and his response was to throw the young man out of the room, landing outside in the training court. But even after the scolding, Hui Yang seemed to be in a good mood, because he knew exactly what that system meant. A few days passed, and he finally accepted that he had really returned to the past, remembering the pill that brought him there, and wondering if it was the demon pill, a pill capable of sending a person 30 years in the past truly worthy of its name. But he still couldn't understand why the leader of the Martial Alliance would give him something so powerful, thinking the solution was simple. Just don't accept the pill in the future, because without it, the demonic cult would have no reason to attack, and he could live as a simple merchant. And with his knowledge of the future, he believed he could become an even greater merchant than before, basically speedrunning the capitalism route instead of the martial arts grind. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice asking if that was where he had been relaxing, and another disciple questioned him for not practicing martial arts, reminding him that today was the evaluation for secular disciple, and Hu Yang recognized him as Jian Asu, the son of the family that ran the Wuhan Bank, replying that even if they did well, they would never become full disciples of the main sect, even mocking the others' training by saying it didn't even look like Tai Chi. Because who needs martial arts when you've got business connections to make? Giant Asu changed the subject and asked about the grass flutes Hu Yang was making, and he explained they were there more to make contacts than to train in martial arts, because the young disciples who only trained their whole lives would probably love to buy something different like a grass flute. And Hu Yang remembered that in the future Jian Asu would become the owner of the Wuhan Bank, and in his past life, he was expelled in just 1 month, so they never became close. But now Jian Asu tested one of the flutes and bought it for 3 copper coins, leaving with a victorious smile. And Hu Yang finally got the money he needed, wondering how to use the bamboo strip, and believing that if the pill was real, this must be too. And when he held the coins, a mental message asked if he wanted to buy the quick movement ability. The purchase confirmed instantly as the bamboo strip disappeared, and he realized just the desire to buy was enough. But he didn't feel a big difference in his body, which is always the calm before the storm. Suddenly, a scream of pain caught his attention, and he saw a main disciple twisting the arm of a secular disciple for criticizing his Tai Chi, threatening to break the other's arm. But the secular disciple wasn't intimidated and called them spoiled brats. And before the boy could break his arm, Hu Yang stepped forward, appearing out of nowhere and grabbing the main disciple's arm with the kind of speed that made everyone's jaws drop, and the youth threatened to break Hu Yang's arm too, saying a secular disciple would never beat him. But Hu Yang positioned himself, and with a formal gesture introduced himself as Mock Hu Yang, politely asking the youth to release his friends so they could talk. But the boy arrogantly said he could break the arm first and talk later. So Hu Yang dropped the casual, "Honestly, I don't care what you do to the other," before changing the subject with a mischievous smile and saying he had a very good product to show. Because this guy is hustling, even in the middle of a confrontation. Sometime later, the commotion had dissipated, and Hu Yang moved to a more isolated area of the mountain to continue his business of selling grass flutes, trying to play one but admitting it was difficult to play as well as Jian Asu. Even so, he believed it would be good enough to attract the young disciples passing by, and a boy named Mayan Jiang approached asking if they could try the flute. But Hu Yang's friend intervened, saying, once someone put it to their lips, the value dropped because it became used. So Hu Yang took the opportunity and explained that this demo flute was different, normally costing 5 copper coins, but since it was for demonstration, he'd give a special price of just 3 copper coins. Though the young disciples seemed disappointed, confusing him because their reaction wasn't what he expected, but he kept the good mood and special discount on 5 flutes. And Mayan Jiang explained shyly he didn't usually carry money and asked if he could buy on credit or pay with another item. And Hu Yang realized it was natural that kids stuck on a mountain training all day would have no money, because his plan was never to take their money but to create a connection. So with a sigh, he said he'd give them a flute for free, and the boy was radiant. Hu Yang bowing and saying it was an honor to offer his products to the disciples of the Wang sect, and Mayan smiled and accepted with gratitude. Hu Yang remembered that in his past life that boy became a famous wooting master known as the Invincible Sword of Tea, a great master, and Hu Yang thought being known by someone like him was definitely a profitable deal, because networking beats training any day. Suddenly a sword was pointed at his neck, and a voice questioned, accusing him of tempting the sect's disciples with cheap products. And Hu Yang realized by his robes he was of the same generation as Chiang Ian, concluding this must be the boy's master and thinking martial artists always try to intimidate with strength, noticing even the children were scared for no reason. And Hu Yang was annoyed by the master's attitude, wondering why warriors treated everything non-martial vulgar, grumbling under his breath if it was so wrong to appreciate a little music. But the master heard him and asked what he just said, so Hu Yang quoted an old saying about wavering eyes and hearts, concluding the target is always at the same distance, and questioning the master if calling that temptation was an exaggeration since he knew the truth, which is basically a philosophical mic drop. The master remained silent, the flute fell to the ground, and Hu Yang turned to leave, but the master called him impudent, blue energy exploding from his body and enveloping him completely, asking if he should consider Hu Yang's words an insult to the rules of Wang. And Hu Yang was nervous because using internal energy was a bit unfair, but he calmed himself thinking however reckless wooting might be, they wouldn't kill someone over something so small. And faced with the pressure, he decided to respond in kind, shouting that if the wind blows, a tree cannot stand still, but only move forward, and all the tree can do is pray not to break, which is the kind of energy that makes masters either kill you or adopt. The master exploded in laughter and praised Hu Yang's courage. Impressed, he stayed calm under the aura pressure, then decided to buy all 15 flutes for 75 copper coins, asking about the discount Hu Yang had offered. And Hu Yang replied the special discount was only for minors, smiling and saying a revered master of wooting would certainly not insist on paying the children's price, calling him a ridiculous brat, and handing him a note for 100 copper coins, telling him to keep the change as payment for intimidating him while the children played their flutes. Hu Yang asked for the master's name and was surprised he didn't know it, so the master introduced himself as Chiang Hua, and Hu Yang immediately recognized him as the extreme and infinite divine sword. One of the 5 greatest masters of Wang who in the future would become one of the 8 lords, a giant among giants, and he was shocked for having spoken that way to such an amazing person, nervously bowing and saying it was an honor. But in his thoughts, he stated that just as Wuding had its path, a merchant also had his, and Qianghua smiled and called him a cheeky brat, saying Hu Yang really didn't back down a single step before leaving with his disciple, and Hu Yang sighed, relieved to have gotten away with. His friend praised his courage, but Hu Yang thought he barely overcame one obstacle when a bald and robust man approached, introducing himself as Saging Ian of the SRO Gate, and Hu Yang knew he was the biggest troublemaker among the secular disciples, the main reason for his expulsion before regression, and Saging confirmed if he was mock Hu Yang, saying he heard the son of the High King became a secular disciple, but Hu Yang denied it, saying he was just from a common farming family. And Saging mocked him, asking how he'd survive without a good background before offering to be a friend and extending his hand. And Hu Yang remembered in his past life, he accepted that hand, thinking it was the chance of a lifetime, until the incident that led to his expulsion because Saging framed him for having vulgar books in his room, and Elder Chiang Ian expelled him without accepting excuses. And Hu Yang remembered his anger at being tricked, but back then, he was struggling to survive, so revenge was out of the question. Now in the present, Hu Yang stared at Saging with anger. His friend tried to defend him, but Hu Yang shouted for his friend to grow up and called Saging a bald punk, stepping forward determined not to repeat the same mistake. And Saging smiled and said he thought Hu Yang only talked a good game but was actually a madman without brakes. So Hu Yang smiled and said at this rate, someone would end up getting punched, challenging him to fight with everything and get expelled together. And Saging was silent for a moment, surprised by the audacity, then turned with a threatening look saying he'd be watching. And Hu Yang thought it was a pity because he wouldn't mind fighting and getting expelled, remembering in his past life this happened a month later, but now he needed to get out to use his knowledge, deciding he'd have to pull something off. During the evaluation, Jian Asu asked worriedly what he'd do if he faced Saging, and Hu Yang calmly replied the pairings were random and he'd handle it. But in fact, he knew exactly who his opponent would be, one of Saging's subordinates, remembering he was completely crushed in his past life for having no talent, but now he had a small trump card. At night, the evaluation began. Elder Chiang Ian watched with a bored look until Qianghua arrived, saying his master suggested he take a look, and Chiang Ian admitted he'd made some adjustments to the pairings, which made Qianghua curious as he watched Hu Yang with a thoughtful look before asking permission to adjust the next fight, and suddenly Hu Yang felt a chill down his spine. Chiang Ian announced mock Hu Yang to the arena, and Hu Yang said goodbye to his friend, entering and waiting for his opponent. But to his surprise, it was Saging Ian himself, and he was shocked by the sudden change, looking at the masters and realizing it was Qianghua who changed the fight. Saging Ian smiled maliciously, thinking his chance came early, advancing and calling Hu Yang a rascal, but Hu Yang threw a small bag of powder into Saging's face, the unexpected attack surprising everyone and hitting Saging squarely, and Hu Yang prepared to continue, landing a powerful triple talent fist on him and then another in the back, but suddenly his body felt strange and he stopped, getting grabbed and thrown to the ground by Saging, who swore he'd kill him. And Hu Yang thought he got carried away, hitting him twice without thinking. Saging got taken by surprise by a sandbag thrown at his face, and Hu Yang mocked him while others shouted indignantly. The elder, furious and complaining the tactic seemed like something from demonic sects, but Qianghua touched the elder's shoulder to contain his anger, suggesting they keep watching because the young man had some plan. Saging became enraged and delivered a powerful kick, but Hu Yang dodged with impressive agility, landing crouched and then advancing to land a precise punch on Saging's chin with extreme precision. And Hu Yang looked at his own fists, feeling the triple talent fist flowing with perfect ease, all thanks to the quick movement ability he bought for 3 copper, and he connected another devastating blow right in Saging's face, leaving him stunned and losing posture. Hu Yang smiled, excited to realize how appealing the power was, deciding he needed to get out and start making money. But his thoughts were interrupted by a dark threat as Saging wiped his bleeding mouth and swore he'd kill him, concentrating his chi to deliver a fatal blow with absurd speed, making clear the difference in internal strength. And Hu Yang had nowhere to run, beginning to question if it was really impossible to beat someone with internal energy. The rival advanced furiously, but Qianghua appeared out of nowhere and blocked the mortal attack, ending the dispute, reprimanding Saging for using internal energy against beginner. And though Saging argued he was attacked with cheating first, Qianghua agreed the protagonist acted wrong too, condemning the cheap trick and warning he'd receive severe punishment, which Hu Yang accepted resignedly. The master declared the evaluation over, and Hu Yang celebrated in silence for achieving all his goals, managing to hit the rival and arranging a perfect reason to be expelled, planning to start his commercial business and architecting every step of his bright future. Meanwhile, Qianghua reflected on what he witnessed, and Chiang Ian insisted the protagonist must be expelled for pure malice, but Chianghua questioned if his brother noticed something incredible in the execution of his movements, recalling the boy acted with absurd precision without training other arts, his movement impeccable, which could only mean that youth possessed monstrous natural talent. Chiang Ayan insisted the rules were rigid and asked what punishment they should apply, and Chianghua was thoughtful with a light smile. Then the elder announced Mak Hui Yang would temporarily serve in the treasure pavilion, telling him to be grateful for Master Chianghua's friendly decision, and upon leaving the elder wondered why they didn't expel him for good. Hui Yang was completely paralyzed, realizing his expulsion plans failed, panicking and wondering why things changed so much, the unexpected change ruining the strategy he'd plotted, and his colleague tried to console him, saying at least he avoided expulsion and encouraging him to train harder now that he'd demonstrated sword talent. But Hui Yang just grumbled with disdain, totally rejecting any praise about his talent, remembering he failed miserably at mastering any martial art in his previous life, all that ease coming from the system's mysterious martial talents shop. Leaving the laments aside, he decided to accept his fate for now, walking toward the treasure pavilion, realizing his quick exit would have to be delayed. But upon learning the pavilion handled finances, he decided to take the chance to profit, though his optimistic plans crumbled as soon as he entered and came face to face with Master Chiang while waiting with a beautiful smile, discovering Chianghua himself was responsible for the location. The master revealed he came to designate the messenger role to the youth, and Hu Yang was startled to hear he'd have to work making deliveries for the sect. Despairing at the absurd distance, he'd travel on foot between the peaks, but Chianghua tried to reassure him, saying it was just extra help, deciding to guide him through the mountain to teach the paths, and Hu Yang realized with despair his situation had become completely terrible. Later that night, he analyzed the dangerous paths he'd need to cross, and decided he wouldn't risk his precious second life by falling off a cliff, slipping out of his quarters to set his new plan in motion, running with all his strength and realizing fleeing in the middle of the night was his only way out. The full moon illuminated the sect's main gate as he tried to escape, but he hesitated at the darkness, regretting not buying night vision, so he lit a torch knowing it would make him an easy target. But he convinced himself the mountain was too big for anyone to find him, until two figures appeared blocking his path under the aim of a sword. He invented quickly that he was just a herb harvester who fell asleep during work, showing some green leaves picked in a rush, and the guards analyzed them not knowing if they were real herbs, so the protagonist mocked in thought knowing they couldn't differentiate herbs from weeds, and the guard let it pass, returning the torch and warning him to be careful. Relieved to get past the guards, he ran down the stairs, spotting the large main gate and smiling with arrogance, certain no one else could prevent his escape. But a firm voice called his name and he froze, recognizing that striking voice he feared so much, the master appearing with a mysterious smile and asking if Hu Yang thought his escape attempt would go unnoticed. Hu Yang lamented internally for being caught again, surrendering and asking how he discovered his true intentions, and Chianghua smiled lightly, questioning if the youth doubted the perception of a trained warrior, explaining facial expressions and muscles never lie about what we feel. Knowing he was caught, Hu Yang asked what the master intended to do with him, and before taking action, the master said he wanted to hear a sincere answer, questioning why he wanted to leave Wuding when thousands dream of entering, and Hu Yang lied, saying he preferred to leave because he knew he didn't have the necessary talent, but the master countered firmly, pointing out that the youth didn't even try for real. The protagonist insisted on the lie of being a lost case in the hope of being released, but Chianghua said he saw through that lie because the youth's talent was truly incredible, asking for sincerity and promising to keep the real reason for his departure a secret. So without being able to speak about the talent system, the youth decided to invent another explanation, stating in an audacious tone that the Wang sect was simply too small, deciding to speak his mind without fear, and thinking that now he would certainly be sent away. A heavy silence took over the environment while the master just stared at him without reaction, and the protagonist started to shake from nervousness, wondering if he ended up crossing reasonable limits and asking if the master was okay, noting that he started to give lows, but to his astonishment, Chianghua said he understood perfectly the meaning of his words, and the youth filled with hope, thinking that finally he would be released without major problem, only for the master to deny it firmly, leaving the youth completely frustrated and confused. The master stated that as a member of Wang, he could not let someone speak like that and stand still, drawing his blade and saying he would personally show the true essence of Wang, assuming a combat stance while a bright blue energy enveloped his sword, and Hu Yang protected himself from the strong wind, realizing that the air pressure changed suddenly and that this went far beyond a simple martial arts blow. The master jumped through the air, emanating a trail of mystical energy of extreme beauty and immense yin, with a symbol drawing itself on the ground around them due to the powerful aura, and Chianghua asked the boy to pay close attention to each of his movements as his steps became so fast and light that they seemed to slide smoothly across the soil, with several traces of the master appearing in the arena, simulating a sequence of perfect attack. Mo Yang watched everything in a trance, finding that display of techniques beautiful. The master's movements incredibly smooth and flowing like the waters of a calm river, while his attacks gained an overwhelming aggressiveness. The sequence of blows uninterrupted, reminding of the deep vastness of a wild ocean, and it was the legendary secret technique known as the Tai Wisdom Sword. The master finishing the demonstration under the moonlight with an impeccable presence, as the mystical pattern on the ground started to dissipate slowly. Hu Yang continued in a trance with his jaw dropped after witnessing such power, and Changhua asked in a friendly way if the youth managed to understand the martial lesson. But the youth remained silent for an instant before confessing that he had just one doubt, and the master wanted to know what exactly was going through his disciple's head. Putting his sword away and recalling the youth's mockery about the size of the sect, extending his hand and emanating a mysterious purple aura to prove the depth of Wang, leaving the protagonist hypnotized as he looked closely at the impressive energy flowing from there. The master guaranteed with total conviction that the sect was capable of sheltering any type of talent, but Hu Yang hid his own forehead, indignant at seeing how warriors summarize everything into fights, knowing that trying to make a future great merchant become a Taoist monk was totally useless. So he apologized for the previous audacity, but made it clear that his opinion on leaving didn't change, shouting very loudly and reaffirming his total refusal to remain on that mount. The master watched him in silence for a moment before asking the reason for such stubbornness, and the youth replied that it was just a wish of his, asking what the master intended to do and challenging, saying the decision was his while the master just listened calmly. And Changhua said the youth really had no idea of the dimension of his own talent, comparing the youth's escape to a child jumping into a well without anyone trying to intervene. His determined look making it clear that he did not intend to let the youth ruin himself, declaring authoritatively that he was forbidden from leaving the sect without his order, and reminding that the youth's parents would certainly support his stay under the master's guard. Hu Yang shouted in despair, not understanding why the master made such a point of holding him, claiming furiously that he was just a simple son of a farmer without great aspirations, and pointing out that Wang already had everything it needed and did not need someone like calling for a logical answer, while the master's silence left tense. But a corner smile appeared on the master's face, and before his final revelation, Changhua replied with total mockery, saying that there was simply no specific reason. The next day, after the shameful failure of his escape, the youth woke up at his new post and discovered that he had been promoted temporarily to the role of internal disciple of Wang, with the master explaining that it would be difficult to watch the boy's steps as a mere secular disciple, and revealing that the sect leader did not trust him fully to give the definitive position, encouraging him with fervor and saying that his effort could guarantee the official position. But the boy despaired, knowing he needed to get out of there to manage to buy more talents. He considered for a second revealing the whole truth about the system shop and the money, but concluded it would be madness, and decided to continue walking with his head down with the master, thinking that if he had a little money he could buy talents to try another escape. And with a sudden idea he called the master in an urgent tone, asking shamelessly if the master by chance had any money stored with him, leaving Changhua perplexed and admitting that that was the most unusual question he had ever heard. So the youth justified himself by asking to exchange the note he received earlier for real coins, and the master pointed out that money didn't have much utility there, but the youth insisted on the request, so Changhua accepted and took the paper, promising to make the exchange quickly. However, upon entering the pavilion they were received with questions about the punishment, and the master appeared holding a beautiful pile of freshly exchanged copper coins to the boy's unhappiness, warning that he would withhold the money until the end of the punishment, and the protagonist went into absolute despair, shouting that those coins belonged to him. But the master said he was just guarding them, and the youth retorted that money from now was worth much more. So the master mocked and asked if he wanted interest, but the boy just begged for the coins, while the master guarded them, smiling and pretending to lament deeply for the situation, confessing that if he returned the money the youth would certainly try to escape again, guaranteeing the return after the end of the forced service and withdrawing from the location. All that shouting ended up attracting the attention of another important member of the pavilion, a sleepy man appearing and complaining about the noise that disturbed his precious rest, and Changhua greeted the newcomer calling him Brother Changsu, who vented ironically about his new role as master of the treasure pavilion, and analyzed the protagonist from top to bottom without thinking he had the look of a real fighter. So Changhua thanked the sect brother with a subtle bow, leaving the boy under his care. The newly arrived master sighed with exhaustion while watching his companion move away from the location, and Hu Yang asked what he should do now, suspicious that the two plotted against him. But without viable alternative, he decided just to follow the master and obey his order, while Changsu explained simply that the work schedule would be from dawn until dusk, and ordered him to deliver several bamboo tubes to the distant Samyang pavilion, making Hu Yang despair because that pavilion was at the highest point of the mount, arguing desperately that without lightness arts, he would just delay the entire delivery service. The protagonist realized the real problem was still to be revealed by the master, and was completely horrified to see the colossal size of the bag he needed to carry, throwing himself on the ground and throwing a tantrum while shouting that he would certainly die falling off a cliff. But the master threatened him coldly, saying he would be expelled for neglecting his obligations, reminding that the youth now had official obligations for being an internal disciple, and warning severely that the expulsion of an internal disciple required the destruction of the danshan. So Hu Yang shook with dread, knowing that having his danshan destroyed would leave him crippled forever. Jiangsu withdrew, ordering him to present himself in his room, and as soon as he finished the task, the boy punched the ground, cursing the trap set by Master Chianghua. But without a choice, he started to organize the heavy bamboo tubes inside the large bag, putting the immense load on his back and complaining bitterly about his terrible luck, grabbing the sharp rocks with force while starting his steep climb, cursing the crazy masters of Wang with pure fury.